Welcome to Real Estate in Real Time. I'm Woody Zimmerman here with Mark Skabowski of Remax Lakes. Welcome to the show.
Here we are. Morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I know it's cold. It's cold outside. You know, the inauguration, they brought it inside. It's been cold like this entire week. Finally, I mean, it's 25 degrees. Actually, doesn't feel that bad anymore.
It feels great.
Because
feels great.
because I remember driving in my car this week and it's like -1 with a wind chill feeling like -25.
Yeah, craziness.
Yeah.
Craziness. School's been canceled a couple of days.
Yeah. Yep.
And like I said, I made the mistake of looking at Christiansted,
Yeah.
St. Croix weather. It's
Yeah.
80 degrees.
Yeah, 80 degrees.
But if you look at the forecast, it's always 76 to 82. It's kind of consistent weather. That's what I'm looking for.
Need to spend more time there. yeah.
There, absolutely.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So
All right.
thought we'd talk a little bit about, time in the market.
Yeah. Yeah.
When's the perfect time to move?
Well, that's always a big question. When's the perfect time to move?
It is. And, we can analyze it to death. We can, predict it to death. You can read articles on it. Well, you shouldn't do this unless you... Ultimately, what's it come down to?
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to your why.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I considering a move?
Yeah.
Even though inventory is up almost to pre-pandemic levels.
Oh, is it really?
It's still low.
Okay.
It's still low compared to 19. We're finally starting to catch that. But, we had that 20, 21, 22 where everything was flying off the shelf. There wasn't enough inventory. There wasn't all of those things. But what we're beginning to see is builders are building again. Mm-hmm. Prices have come down on construction materials and things like that. I say they've come down. They're still higher than what we would like to see, but they've come down somewhat. And I think a lot of builders finally just said, "The heck with it, we're going to go and do it. We're going to build." As we were talking a little bit about off air, there's incentives. A lot of this new construction, the builders are buying interest rates down. They're buying rates down so they can keep people moving into homes. They're building homes, they want to sell them.
Well, I was wondering how that worked because we're sitting at around 7% right now, but then I'll see like special deals out there, 6% or 5.5% or whatever.
Yeah. So the builders are, and in fact, it's funny. It's one of the questions on an appraisal. There's lots of blocks on an appraisal, but there's remarks for an appraiser to put. Is it standard for builders to offer incentives? Well, right now, builders are offering incentives. Now, not all builders, but many are. If they're these higher volume production builders, because rates are at 7% and prices are at pretty much all-time highs, people are hesitant to buy. And it makes sense. When you look at the difference in the payment on a 7% rate versus a 5% rate, which you're not going to get a 5% rate unless there's an incentive out there, somewhere. There is no way, there's nobody that's offering a 5% rate without somebody paying something in the background. Because the federal funds rate is still pretty high. Even though they've cut back, rates are still up. So it doesn't mean you can't get a 5% rate, but who's paying for it? There's no free lunch, no matter what is going on. So either builders are giving up some on the front end, they're prepaying interest, they're paying points to buy that rate down, which you can as well. If you want to get a 5% rate, and rates are at 7%, you can prepay interest on that note to get it down, but that'd be pretty significant. When a point is like 1/8 of a percentage point, which is 8 times to get a full percentage. So if you're trying to drop 2% off of an interest rate to get 5%, you're going to prepay
a lot of money
to get that rate. But if you're going to be in a place for a long term, that very well could make sense for you to do that. So bottom line, don't try to time the market when it comes to interest rate. Don't try to time the market when it comes to inventory. I mean, you can't. I mean, there are going to be those that take advantage of it and will, through blind luck, even though they'll claim, hey, I planned it, you can't time the market. It's just like the stock market, trying to time the market. Can you call the bottom? Can
No.
you call the top?
No, you can't.
Nobody can. We can operate with the environment that we are. You can see what's there, but who can tell you that interest rates have bottomed out? Who can tell you that interest rates have topped out? I could argue at this point, well, 7%, well, rates are going to go down. Well, yeah, they could, but what if? What if this happens? We've got a change in Washington. The thought is that the economy should begin to improve. Well, you would have some say, economists tell you, well, the economy's fine. How can we still have high inflation if the economy is not doing well? Well, talk that when you go, you're still paying $3.49 a gallon for gas.
Well, a funny thing is that off air you said rates were at 7% last January. They're at 7% this January.
Yeah.
And we talked about this. The Fed talked about dropping rates all year long,
right.
But we're right back to where we started a year ago.
The Fed did drop rates.
They
right?
did,
They
right.
did make cuts.
They did.
But yet we're back at 7% again.
Yeah.
So in last year, if you went back and listened to the shows last year, when in January, it's like 7%. That slows the market. It's like somebody turned the faucet off. However, we did see a decrease in rates through about August, September, I think is the time frame, and then they started to tick back up again.
But they were trying to curb inflation at the time.
Right.
You know?
But yet inflation's still high.
It's still
so
high.
how can the economy not be good and yet inflation be high?
Right. I know.
In my pocketbook, when eggs are $5.89 a dozen, and gas is still in the $3.5 range. Back there was a time when we were at $2 a gallon for fuel again.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to get us.
We're expecting some changes coming up here.
Absolutely, we're expecting some changes coming
That's
along.
good. All right, we're going to talk more on this. Perfect time to move coming up next. You're listening to Real Estate in Real Time. Welcome back. You're listening to Real Estate in Real Time. I'm Woody Zimmerman here with Mark Skabowski of Remax Lakes, and we're talking about the perfect time to move. We kind of got onto the economy and what expectations for 2025, and the feeling is that things are going to get better. The economy is going to get better. Hopefully, we can see some rates drop, and that will make the market pick up. But the perfect time to move is the topic, and it's really hard.
There is none.
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint the perfect time.
For me to sit here and tell every individual, this is when you need to do it. This is when you need to go. Because there's a lot of factors that come into it. And that's where I say it's personal. Every one of these decisions, the decision on buying a house or continuing to rent, selling a house, buying another house, it's all individual. You have to evaluate that yourself. What is your why? And I know we harp on that over and over, but that's the reality. You can try to time the market. You can try to predict when inventory is going to pick up. I talk to sellers now, well, I want to wait till the spring because there's more buyers. Well, yes, there is more buyers typically because the selling cycle starts April, May, and it goes through late September into late October sometimes. I mean, we've talked about that before, the sine curve on the number of homes that are sold and all of those things. But I could offset that with in January and February, you have more serious buyers, people that are willing to traipse through the -2 degree temperature to walk into a house to look at it to buy. They're more serious at that time. Then you get more people looking, which ultimately leads to more sales in those other times. But as a seller, if you need to sell.
Right.
Well, I'm going to wait till prices go up. Well, prices are pretty high. At this point.
They are.
And buyers, well, on the flip side, I'm going to wait to buy until prices go down. Probably not going to happen.
Yeah, you're going to wait a long time because we're not going to see that.
There is no prediction on that. We can sit here all we want. So, well, market prices are going to go down because inventory is going up. Well, how do we know what's going on with demand? Right? Because if demand's increasing, what's going to happen to price? If inventory is the same or if inventory goes up, there's so many factors into it. You'll drive yourself nuts trying to think all of those details through. But the things that you can control are, what's it mean to me? Why do I need to move? Do I need to move? I've been renting a long time. I'd like to own something so that at long term I can increase some equity because rents have continued to go up, although there has been some pullback. I mean, I don't see as many people complaining about it. I'm not in the rental market. You don't see as many people complaining about it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Where a 2-bedroom small house in Warsaw was $1,200-$1,400 a month. You don't see those posts anymore. So maybe rents have pulled back some. But the reality is, as long as you're renting, you're not gaining any equity. If
Right.
you're owning, you're gaining equity, even as homes appreciate in value. We've had the buyers that are hesitant to get into the market because, well, the market's going to fall off the face of the earth and I'm going to lose.
I don't
Haven't
see
seen
that.
that
Yeah,
yet.
right. Yeah.
Haven't seen that yet. And history shows long term, real estate is a good investment.
Yes.
It is
very
a
much.
good long term investment. If you're only going to be in a place for a year, I would not tell you to go ahead and buy.
No.
You may as well rent if
Right.
you're only thinking. So what are these pieces we're talking about? It's your why.
Mm-hmm.
It's your why. It doesn't matter what it costs, within reason. I mean, if you can afford the payments, if it makes sense to you financially to do it, if it makes sense for your family, if moving closer to work makes sense for you because you're sick of traipsing, driving an hour to work.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the Warsaw market, we don't see a lot of people doing that, but me personally, I used to drive an hour to Fort Wayne when I was in Michigan. I was close, but my wife drove an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 hours on a Friday getting home with traffic.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It was crazy.
Right.
So moving closer, so only you know, as an individual and your family, can make that decision. So ultimately, building equity, does it meet so gain long-term wealth? Does the house or owning a home, does it fit your lifestyle better? How many living in an apartment? I just came back from D.C. My youngest daughter lives in D.C., lives in an apartment, just rented a house in Alexandria. Totally different feels in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
The living in downtown Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
versus living in Alexandria, totally different communities.
I bet.
So, and here, Warsaw versus North Webster versus Syracuse versus Claypool,
Yeah.
every community feels a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Does the house or that location fit your lifestyle? Is it close enough to work? Is there shopping? People are making those decisions, or you should evaluate that for your own personal needs.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, how often do I shop? Not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I used to drive to Fort Wayne every day when I worked in Fort Wayne. Now it's like, oh man, I got to drive to Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
It's an hour. You
Yeah,
commute from Fort Wayne every day.
Right. It is. It's,
Right?
It takes. Yeah. It's an hour. Yeah. It's
But
a long
your
time.
lifestyle, your schools, everything made sense for you to stay where
Right.
you were.
My
not
kids
to
were
move there.
established.
Right.
They were already going to Catholic schools. I
Right.
promised my wife that they'd go to a Catholic,
Right.
high school, and so
Right.
yeah. So it did make sense.
So you evaluated your why. You made that decision, even though you're working here.
Right.
So we all do those, evaluate those things on our own. So bottom line, to summarize, there is no perfect time to move.
Mm-hmm.
When it fits your schedule and your needs, everything that you'd like to have, that's the perfect time.
Yeah.
I can't predict or tell you when it is. That's when it is. You need to evaluate it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of your job is like being a psychologist.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
A counselor. So,
Yes, yes.
All right, very good. Well, if you'd like to continue this conversation with Mark personally, reach out to him. Your contact info?
Sure. Website, skabowskiteam.com. You can send me an email from there. Phone number is 574-527-0660.
All right, very good. You've been listening to Real Estate in Real Time. Have yourself a wonderful weekend.